This week we have a Tonko House member who joined us in February, Mike Dutton. And Mike has worked, we used to go painting together. Dice and I used to go painting with him in the morning as part of what we called early bird paintings. And we've known Mike for a while. Mike worked at Google as well as YouTube, published his own children's book called Food Truck Fest. That's out there now. And Mike is just somebody who I think for both Dice and I embody a lot of what we'd love for Tonko House to be and also become. And so, yeah, we recorded a great little Tonko Cast. Dice couldn't join us this time, but check it out. So, Mike, welcome to Tonko Cast.
Thank you.
We've known each other for a bit. We used to go painting in the morning for a little bit, and I've always known you as this artist that has been at Google and YouTube, now here at Tonko House. And I know growing up that you lived in a lot of different places, but I was curious from your point of view, what contributed to you becoming an artist growing up?
First, thank you. I'm also just a longtime fan of yours. I know we've been friends for a while,
Thanks,
but I've always admired all you guys when we would go out painting and want to be like you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
And as far as wanting to be an artist, I think, exactly like you said, I moved around a lot, and I think as a result of that, I didn't always have friends. My dad was in the military, so we would move every couple of years, and so that meant a lot of kind of staying at home and drawing with my brothers and kind of making up little games on paper and that sort of thing, little comics, and
cool.
It just sort of grew out of that, really.
That's awesome. And then you went to Academy of Art.
Yes.
But you left early.
I did leave early, yeah.
What contributed to that decision?
Yeah, it was not an easy one. It was a big decision to go in the first place, just because of the sort of financial burden. And that was actually part of the reason why I left. I felt like my dad was paying a lot of the school bills, and I just kind of felt like I needed to take the classes that would get me as professional ready as possible without worrying about actually getting the credits. Bless you, to actually graduate. So that wasn't the original plan. I did want to graduate, but part of it was just, in all honesty, it was also partially arrogance, where I took some of the classes where I thought, okay, this is a legendary illustrator. I'm going to take his class and learn everything. Now I'm ready. Yeah. And so I kind of had a little bit of that, thinking that, I've taken all the classes, I know all the things, I'm going to go out there and do it. But also part of that was, just trying to give myself some confidence to take on something that scary. And it worked for a couple years.
Leaving school early, and then you were working kind of immediately?
I was doing some freelance work right out of school for Wizards of the Coast. I was doing some work in like fantasy games and some other smaller role-playing game companies. And one of the things that made it really difficult then was this was the first .com boom.
Oh, okay.
And I was living in the Bay Area at that time. And
it was like the early 2000s.
Yeah, this is end of the 90s.
End of the 90s.
Early 2000s. Just to date myself a little bit. That's way back in the first .com boom, pets.com. I found that trying to work and live in the Bay Area, doing role-playing game artwork was not a sustainable,
pretty tough
living. So I quickly put myself out of business.
Interesting.
After about a year or two of work. And it was also partially a bit of unrest kind of working in the market. I think it's really fun and definitely catered to my sort of childhood and child sensibilities and the things that I was into, but Yeah, I think I was interested in just doing something a little different. So kind of took a couple of years off from illustration, actually.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And yeah, it was partially by choice, but also just from mistakes and just wanting to have, this is why you guys stay in school. I just don't want to give like bad advice, like stay in school, or if you do leave, have a plan. And in my case, it ended up with me working in some odd jobs for a couple of years.
Got it.
I was doing brush fire prevention.
Oh, wow.
I was a workers' compensation insurance adjuster for a couple of years. Quickly learned that I didn't want to do that anymore.
And when you were doing that, was your ambition always to come back to art? It always felt like a short-lived thing. I'm just going to do this for a bit and then find my legs again.
Yeah, but it was also one of those things where I think I could have very easily become complacent and just sort of clock in, go to the steady job, in downtown San Francisco, and leave at the same time every day. And, it was right around that time that I met my future wife, and I felt like I don't want to be that person that just comes home miserable just to, and make this person I want to marry miserable as well. So that was one of the really nice things about our relationship, was that she supported and kind of motivated me to pursue art again. And so,
that's so cool. Yeah,
that kind of, just throughout my life, I've been very lucky to have, supportive people in my life. My parents, supported me going to art school. They more or less supported me when I dropped out, and then having meeting my wife, who supported me getting my career, my art career back on track.
Wow.
Which was an adventure as well.
Yeah, I mean, how did you make a transition? I imagine there's a lot of risk, and again, you've got to take that leap of faith at some point to get it back on.
This is kind of around the time where I met you guys, but that was part of that journey of getting back into illustration. I was working part-time jobs. I was doing the brush fire prevention again, which was very physical labor in the Oakland Hills to just whack really dense weeds and brush all day. But the nice thing about that was that I was mentally freed up throughout the day, unlike workers' comp. So I could go home and have the energy to actually work on my portfolio and just study, sketch from life, all of those things. And that's actually how I met Dice. Is I went down to Comic-Con because the Out of Picture book had come out. I just wanted to meet everybody there. I saw that Flight was the table next door. So I was just going out to meet my heroes basically. And it turned out that Dice had just moved from the East Coast to the Bay Area, and he was getting into rock climbing, which I've been doing for a number of years. So he just said, "Hey, let's climb sometime." So we started going to the gym and bouldering, and he told me, we actually do these early morning painting sessions. So that's kind of how I got involved, going out in the mornings and painting, and that led to the Early Bird Painter Show at the gallery. And so all of this sort of getting back into it was just kind of taking these little steps and meeting people. And, I really don't like the word networking. For me, it's more about just building and kind of cultivating relationships. And that's, basically what I did was being a little bit more true to my sort of motivations as an artist, which is to create work that that's meaningful to me, and that's something I wasn't getting in my first go as an illustrator, and something I was being very deliberate about in this second attempt. If I'm going to quit this steady job, it's going to be to do something I believe in.
Got it. That's amazing. Yeah, and the Early Bird Painters group was kind of a group of painters, largely from Pixar, but there were a couple guys like yourself that would join us in the morning, and we go out into the Berkeley and Oakland Hills and go painting right before work, and then and that culminated in kind of a show. And I mean, I know a few of those guys still go painting. You go painting still all the time.
Not that early.
Yeah.
Anymore. Once in a while, if I'm traveling, then yeah. But since then, having a couple kids definitely makes it a little harder to get the morning routine in order. But yeah, I like to go out as much as I can.
Yeah.
It's very important to me, just for my kind of like overall well-being, to be able to get out there. It's
outside.
It's a form of it's definitely a discipline and practice, but for me it's much more of a kind of a personal experience where I'm not trying to get a really fantastic painting or a good sketch. It's more about journaling the moment.
That's cool.
Just
great.
Yeah, they're kind of like secret messages to myself. So you can look at a building and just the way the shadows. Yeah. Just there's something about a scene where it just kind of magically lines up with how you're feeling in the moment, and that's usually what kind of inspires me to draw on location. Is kind of seeking out those moments.
That's great. And so you also were one of the first Google Doodlers?
Not the first. No, there was the very first doodle was by the founders. It was actually an out-of-office memo. It was the Burning Man logo that they put on the homepage to let people know that in case the servers went up in flames, this is where we're at for the weekend. Got it. And so since then, when they found out, people really like that. They like that we could take our, the very core of our brand, and mess with it. They realized, we should get more people to do this. So it actually started out with a couple of the web designers that were there that were also able to draw. Yeah. And then as they got more popular, they realized, we actually need to maybe build a team. So I kind of I think when I joined, there were 3 others there. So I was the 4th, but I was probably the second, actually I want to say 5th. I hope I'm not making somebody out there very angry right now if I left them out. But I was probably the second classically trained sort of illustrator that joined the team where, not to say that the other 3 were, not qualified talent, but they definitely wanted to raise the level of illustration there. Yeah. And somehow I was able to squeeze in, and so.
How long were you there?
I was there for just about 5 years at Google. Wow. And then I stayed with Google, but transferred to YouTube for the last 3 years there.
And what were you doing at YouTube?
At YouTube, that's a good question. No, it was great because YouTube was just also starting to figure itself out in terms of brand, and so we joined a brand new art department there, and it was kind of figuring out this sort of overall brand strategy. So I learned a little bit more about just kind of like, on the one hand, 5 years at Google, my job was to kind of take brand and then mess with it. Yeah. And then the last 3 years at YouTube was kind of learning about structuring brand and how to actually build brand identity. And for me, ultimately, that led to working on YouTube Kids. Last year, it was a rebrand for that. So basically, it was taking this part of YouTube that was aimed toward very, very young children and then aging it up so that kids up to potentially 10 years old would still use the product and actually, enjoy it and not feel like it was babying them. Yeah. So that was kind of a tricky bit, making something that appeals to both babies and preteens. But yeah, it was a really fun project. That's
awesome. And you also have your own kind of YouTube content that you've created personally, the bicycle series.
Yeah, that was something that I'd still like to do. Yeah. But I've learned it's really hard to film yourself riding on a bicycle and interview a friend. But yeah, it was this idea that I had when I was when I was still on the Google team. I just would have these really great kind of conversations with my coworkers, and I was part of that was while I was on the Doodle team was I always had a little bit of that envy of people that worked at places like Pixar or Blue Sky. Just like to me, I don't know, this is maybe not the right word, but to me those were kind of like the legit places for artists, whereas Google was still trying to figure itself out, because it wasn't an engineering company first, and design has kind of been something in the last few years that's been taken a little more seriously at Google. But up until that point, or at least where I was at when I was on the Google team, I felt like sort of an outsider, looking in, like, what's it really like to work in animation, or what's it like to be a real illustrator? And
that's so interesting that you felt that way.
Well, that was a big part of my drive on the Doodle team, was to kind of make it feel like, this should be, Google should be a place that you look to when you graduate, that we should be, up there where we have, great in-house talent. It should be, right there with all the other places you apply to.
Yeah.
And whereas when I first was contacted by Google, I thought it was spam email. It just said, "Hey, hi from Google," and I had no idea there was an illustration team there. So that's kind of the journey that the Doodle team was on, was kind of, or that I kind of personally felt strongly about, was getting it to feel like this really, a place where serious talent would be. And so anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent, but part of that was when Willie Real, he joined Google, and he had been at Blue Sky for a number of years. And so for me, that was like, this is our first really serious, like, he comes from animation, and I would have these really great conversations with him, and we also would ride our bicycles once in a while together, and take breaks from our jobs, and just kind of explore the shoreline around Mountain View, and I just thought, man, it would be great to find a way to share these sort of conversations and insights that I'm getting with other people. I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels like the outsider looking in, that wants to kind of know what's it really like. And so kind of came up with that idea of pedal and paint.
And paint.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't done any on my own channel yet, but mostly it's still just me kind of going around sketching. But I'd love to explore that idea of just taking a friend and going out sketching and painting together. And
that sounds so romantic.
Get an entire film crew to follow us around, and
Right. I mean, one thing, since then, Mike, you've done a lot too. It's, Tonko House started talking to you, and Dice and I knew that we wanted to build a stronger art department here, a bigger art department here, and you had experience at Google, but also at YouTube. But what we were looking into, the project that we were looking into, was much more of what we've been doing, is 3D animation, which we felt like it was a no-brainer bringing you in, even though you didn't necessarily work in 3D animation, but that. Just knowing you as a person and kind of your, you can't tell from this interview, but I think you're an incredibly decisive and strong leader. And that quality we had seen from when we were painted even together at the early bird days, when you would organize everyone and you'd be kind of the person to send out the emails and organize the show and all of that stuff. And since then we've always talked, your name has always been brought up, and when we finally have our own company and started to grow out, you were somebody that we thought of immediately, and someone that everyone was excited about. But what has it been like to be put in a place, because for instance, you're working with Chris Sasaki, who's been in the industry for a long time. You're working with Dice and I, who've been working in animation for a long time, and I feel like you kind of fell right in without even blinking an eye, and it immediately we forgot that you didn't necessarily have that experience. But what has it been like for you? Where have your, I'm curious where it's was at before you started what you thought it was going to be, and what it actually is.
Wow. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
First, thank you. Second, like, after just telling you how I felt like I was an outsider looking in, I have to say that I feel like this was the ultimate cheat that I was able to get in. It's like, man, I finally pulled off the great con. And, but I mean, no, it's really, I'm very honored and flattered to hear that that's, what you guys think of me. And, yeah, and like you said, you can't tell from this interview about my decisiveness because I am all over the place right now.
No, not even that, but I feel like you're...
But I mean, the before was, I mean, there was a whole range of emotions. I mean, one, I've been rooting for you guys for a long time. You know, I was just like everybody else, kind of this sort of spectator that would once in a while kind of get to peek inside when, you know, we'd have lunch together and we'd just kind of like talk about things. And I just felt like I had this front row seat to this, you know, really great journey that you guys have been on. So to be invited, you know, to be a part of that journey has been probably, you know, one of the greatest honors of my life. Certainly as, you know, my career as an illustrator, or, you know, somebody in the creative industry. Beforehand, so before I joined, it was, you know, kind of taking the same things into consideration, like, well, they're gonna find out that I'm a hack, you know. I have never worked in animation. I'm not going to know. I'm sure I can pick it up. I had no worry that I would actually, you know, learn and be able to adapt and kind of, you know, once I figure out sort of the, you know, the nuances of, you know, this industry, you know, as opposed to where I came from, that it would click. But I was definitely a little bit nervous about kind of proving myself. And then I found, especially working with Chris, you know, we were friends already, but I had never worked with him. And same thing with you guys, you know, we were friends for a very long time. I was definitely a little bit, you know, skeptical of, you know, is it okay to kind of now, you know, work with my friends? And I would say within the first few hours, you guys put all that to rest.
That's
you,
great.
Chris, and Dice just kind of, you know, there's just this great mix of professionalism and something that pushes us all to be better, but also this support and friendliness that, just kind of made me feel like, I made the right move. I'm really glad I took that risk. Chris would actually call me the first week, you know, like as I was in bed. He'd call it, kind of check in, just see how I'm doing. And there's just something, you know, it never crossed my mind that, hey, you know, I'm off the clock. These are after hours. It's more like, you know, there's this sort of camaraderie, like we're in this together and we have this sort of monumental task ahead of us, but, you know, we can do it. I feel like that's the spirit of Tonko House, that sort of against all odds, you know, somehow, you know, we're going to make it work. And I believe in that strongly enough. I mean, it's something my mom has kind of hammered in me. It's like that whole idea of putting it out into the universe and trusting that, you know, it's going to happen. Not just sitting there and waiting for it to happen, but knowing that if you put it out there and put in the effort, you know, it'll come back. And it's kind of how I feel
That's amazing.
on my journey here so far. Is that against all odds, somehow, you know, making it work, but also, you know, it's sort of an educated risk as well. Like knowing I can do it. I know it's going to be hard, but you know, I've taken a lot of other risks before, and this one feels like it was a no-brainer compared to some of the other choices I've made.
That's amazing. Also because I think, you know, for Dice and I, Tonko House is right around the time, you know, you joined us. We were over 3 years old. It's gone really fast, but it's been a really long journey. And, you know, when for us, as we have been growing to this moment, you know, I think we're a little bit away from being 4 years old in about a month, and you start to get tired. You know, you're on not the last leg, but you feel like you're on this long marathon that you really hope can go on forever and ever and ever. But also to go on forever and ever and ever is an impossible task on your own. But that's where having other people join the journey and bring their own thing to the journey is something that I didn't count on. When you joined the team, one thing I have to say that for both Dice and I, you kind of embody, I think because we've been talking for a long time before you joined the company, and you really, I think in a way, know better what this company, you have a great idea of what you want this company to be, which helps us a lot, I think more than you know, especially at times like this where, you know, the business things, the artistic things, all the things that are going on at Tonko House are kind of happening at once. And it's such a relief to have someone like yourself who kind of pushes it forward seemingly effortlessly in just kind of the way you conduct yourself and the way that you interact. And I gotta say that is something that I think both Dice and I felt from the very beginning of why we also felt like, oh, Mike is gonna be perfect, because in a way I feel like you embody a lot of what Tonko House is about and what we strive to be. And I think that's, you know, something that as we grow, because you've also been a part of us in helping to grow us. Like, it's not just, hey, Mike, welcome to the team. Let's like slowly ramp up. It's like, hey, Mike, I'm going to put you in the deep end. Also, can you help build a team? Can you help train that team? Can you help us get the show on its feet? And I've got to say, it's the fact that you're still here with us and smiling and enjoying it and saying all the wonderful things is...
During this interview while Chris and our production manager are both on vacation.
Shows how much confidence they have. And I just want to say huge thanks about that. But also that on top of all of this, you also have put out a children's book that is really beautiful.
Right. Thank you.
Is that also something where, you know, it's like you've done the Google Doodles, YouTube, you're doing kind of things for yourself in a way, you're doing children's books, you're also learning this, you know, and mastering, I think, this kind of art directing, 3D animated content. But what's the ultimate? What do you want to do with your career, your direction, where you are now?
I think the common thread through all of that is storytelling, and you know, telling a meaningful story. I'm not sure what the ultimate sort of final product of that is. You know, my interests are kind of all over the place. I kind of, you know, I think storytelling is one thread, and then I would say curiosity is the other. That I'm just curious about everything. You know, I think that was one reason why I enjoyed being on the Doodle Team so much, was just getting that chance to study about the subject matter and really, you know, immersing myself in it, and, you know, going on field trips if I had to, you know, if it was, you know, within reason. I traveled and kind of learned about that thing, and then ultimately draw something that goes on the homepage for a day, and hopefully that curiosity and enthusiasm for it kind of carries across in the final, you know, version and inspires other people. And I think that's, for me, that's one example, but I think the ultimate goal is to just have that sort of communication and that bond between whatever work I create and the audience. So having that sort of dialogue. I think art and just creativity is, to me, a form of communication. I don't know exactly how, you know, it could be a film, it could be 3D, you know, it could be a book, it could be an installation, and I kind of want to try all those things. That's another reason why I think Tonko House is, you know, such a great place, because you guys also are, you know, endlessly curious about stuff, or have things kind of come your way, like, oh, we've never done that before, great, let's do it. I just love that energy, and that's definitely something that to me is, it's you know, it may seem like it's kind of from left field or right field or kind of random, but to me it's a big part of, it's an important part of being a creative professional.
Absolutely.
I think one of the great things about Tonko House, and for me, why it was good for me, the sensible jump from, you know, a place like Google and YouTube, where you wear a lot of hats, to somewhere in animation. I think what I kind of hear from a lot of people that do work in animation is that it can feel like, you know, you have to wear one hat and that's what you do, and there isn't a whole lot of room for growth. And to me, that's you know, if you have something outside of work that can kind of feed that curiosity, then that's great. But, you know, it's even better if you can work at a place that actually encourages that actually, you know, that's a part of the culture of the workplace is being curious and sort of firing on all cylinders at all times, like, you know, learning about this and being curious about, you know, something else that, you know, learning something that you have no idea about.
Absolutely. Yeah, this one thing, it makes me think of this one thing Dice, when we started the company, would always say, or even before when we would work for big studios, he always had this idea, and something that I really believe in, that he always aspired to be an artist who works for a big studio or who works for a studio rather than a studio artist. So rather than, you know, be a Pixar artist, he always, you know, made a very clear distinction. No, I'm an artist who works for Pixar. And I feel like that very much is what you're speaking about too, is having your own ambition and curiosity. And when those things can align, it's a beautiful thing. And I think that's amazing. And I think, you know, I hope that we can always kind of find that place that's right. And where it doesn't, then I think that's where, you know, I think it's okay also that we find other grounds or other places to satiate that. Yeah, that's
definitely
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Mike. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. And, you know, hopefully we'll get to keep working and talking for a long time. But that's great.
Thank you so much, Robert. I also want to just kind of point out to everybody that we recorded this interview with the microphone resting on a pig plush, which to me is just
Tonko House.
Everything about Tonko House.